Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Conversations with Therapists. My name is Deborah, and today I'm joined by Ingrid. Ingrid, thank you for being here.
My pleasure.
I'd love to start with your story. What inspired you to become a therapist, and how did your personal and professional journey bring you to where you are today?
Oh, yes. Okay. Big question. Like a lot of therapists, my personal story did inspire me to become a therapist. For a lot of I talk about this on my website, like to be really upfront and honest or open about it. I work with a lot of things that I myself have experienced. So, four primary specialty areas all sort of collided because I myself was sort of in a pursuit to learn how do people heal from this? How can I heal from this? How can I then offer that back to the world? So, a lot of my story began in the Christian church with like a lot of the clients that I work with and began to question as life experience didn't add up to all the things that we were being taught and learned how to meld good health and good mental health with belief and changing belief. And then also chronic pain issues that come along with that. And being on a journey to heal those, and then learning, okay, how do you offer that back and how do you inspire people back that they don't have to stay stuck in that either that box or even just the physical pain, right? So sometimes it is about managing it, sometimes it's about I can free myself from it. And so having experienced that myself, offering that back. And then couples and anxiety usually go right along with that. There's often our relationships are melded into those two really big important areas of our life, our health and our beliefs and what we believe about relationship, what we believe about ourself in relationship. And I have experienced all of those as a daughter, as a partner. If I kind of answer that second part of your question, what, in my work has sort of brought me to today, I was not the youngest, but I was younger when I began my profession in my early 30s. And I would say that I have certainly grown clinically over 10 years of practice. So I'm in my early 40s now, and a lot of my life experience has absolutely helped me shape and understand more of what my clients are going through. Also, I think probably the biggest piece being humility, in that, like, I don't know it all, even as a clinician. And really, the point is to come alongside of you. There's a lot of theory we know, a lot of life understanding I know, but my clients, I consider them the expert on their life. I learned that in grad school, and I've definitely hold that the whole time. And so it's really important in my work to get really into their story, helping them trust themselves and helping them learn to really find safety, self-trust, that empoweredness, those things, because those are really going to guide them as they continue on this life journey, because life's going to throw everything that we don't imagine and then more, right? In both hard and in good. And so that's sort of my foundation. And I've learned that also in my own life. And I hope to inspire and give that back to my clients.
You describe balancing empathy with challenge in your work. Can you share an example of how that looks in practice and why you feel it's important for therapy to be, quote, collaborative and alive?
The biggest piece, probably the best example I can give, is when it comes to couples therapy. So when it comes to relationships, it can often be really hard to fully see how we are showing up. And it can be really challenging to hear what is hard for our partner about how we're showing up in a relationship. And so, while it's really important to have how what our partners brought to us, how it affects us or impacts us, validated and honored, because there usually is something from our past that's really painful that's triggering. I like to start with that, right? Like that makes sense and that is honored and respected. And we're now in the present. We're not in the past anymore. So we want to bring our operating system up to date into the present. And the partner in front of us isn't mom or dad or brother or sister from our original family. And so often that takes a little more challenge and a little more confrontation so that we can begin to separate, okay, what was the hurt from the past and what's really happening now, right? My partner may not actually be hurting me now. It just feels that way. And what do I do with that? And then how do I navigate that with my partner, right? How do I maybe understand the way I'm reacting that then impacts them, that then comes back and impacts me, right? This feedback loop that we get stuck in that feels sort of never ending. And so that process usually takes more challenge, right? More sort of confrontation about how I separate the past and the present, and then how I want to show up now instead of the way I did maybe when I was a child.
As it says on your website, you draw from multiple modalities, including EMDR, EFT, IFS, the Gottman method, and more. How do you decide which approach to use with a client, and what does tailoring therapy to the individual really look like in your practice?
I would say that it's really about what the client's goals are. So, what someone is saying they want to accomplish. And then as we get into the meat of the work, it can become apparent to me, oh, we're going to need, IFS, or we're going to need more Gottman, which is sort of real structured and behavioral work to lay to get there, right? So it's really about, okay, what do they want? What are you asking for? And then what do I know of these modalities? And then how will they help you get there?
You often work with people navigating trauma, chronic stress, or longing for deeper intimacy. What's a common pattern you see that keeps people stuck? And how do you help them break that pattern?
I would say when it comes to trauma and chronic stress, it is a lot of both this melding of education and really actually understanding what's going on so that then they know how to work with it in session and out of session in a way that's actually sustainable. So one of the things that I work a lot with in my practice is people who have been around psychology or around the therapy world, or kind of like it's so infiltrated in our society now that there's so many books, there's so many ideas, there's so many sort of pop psychology things that are out there. There's, Instagram little bits and stuff. And I am even putting those out there now, right, too. And yet sometimes it can be helpful to have somebody who can help make those a little deeper and a little more wisdom oriented in collaboration with somebody, right? Help us really understand how do we apply them to a busy life, to a family, to difficult relationships. And so with trauma and chronic stress, I really help my clients with how do I actually begin to create patterns and habits where this stuff sticks and it really actually it's making sense, right? It's practical. And then I think with deepening intimacy, it's a little bit what I was saying in my earlier question about that place where our trauma and our stress responses collide with our relationships in the present, right? So trauma and stress have usually been learned from the past, and then how they're colliding with the present. And if we can really begin to see that clearly, then we can usually begin to see some shifts and some changes and some deepening of intimacy with our partners. We aren't, it's not intimacy based off of fighting anymore. It's intimacy based off of joy and pleasure and understanding each other and seeing each other.
So on your website, there's a quote that says, "You can't do what you want until you know what you do."
Yes. Yeah.
And that's such a powerful idea. Can you unpack that a little bit for us and share how it shows up in your work with clients?
Sure. So I'll give the context to that quote just a little bit more. So the context is actually from a somatic modality called Feldenkrais, which really is actually done by practitioners who lay hands on clients, right? It's not massage therapy by any means, but it is a nervous system and movement modality where the clinician is helping somebody relearn patterns in their movement to either decrease chronic pain, chronic stress, a whole host of things. It also is done in big groups with these little micro movements. A lot of physical therapists do it, a lot of massage therapists do it. I personally have engaged in it. The application and the way that I saw that it applied to the therapeutic world of talk therapy also was that a lot of kind of what I've been saying about how our past kind of comes into the present. We first really 90% of therapy is becoming aware, is seeing, oh, I do this thing when this other thing happens, and then that makes this happen, and then that happens. And so, really seeing the patterns of either our own behavior towards ourselves or our behavior towards other people, our family, right? Our relationships, and maybe, right? I work with a lot of religious and spiritual people, our relationship with God. And so it's really seeing, okay, X, Y, A, B, and C happen, and then, X, Y, and Z happen. And once I get more and more able to see that with a neutral lens, which in and of itself can be a lifetime practice. So this is sort of mindfulness, self-compassion. How do I begin to see what I do and see it with more neutrality, or at least with more compassion? It's usually from there, then we have a choice, right? And even that process right in there just takes time, right? It's like every time I get a little bit better at seeing, okay, I did it again. Oh, I did it again. Oh, now I'm seeing that I'm going to do it, but I'm able to kind of stop myself and take a pause. And oh, I still did it. Okay, that happens. Okay, now, you know, a month later I see myself do it again, or I see myself going to do it again. But this time I truly pause and I'm able to think through some other options and I do something different. Whoa, my whole nervous system just learned a new pattern, right? And then I do more and more iterations of that over my life and that's how I rewire my system. That's how the system's rewired. So in talk therapy, we're looking at it more in patterns of behavior, right? And patterns of human interaction with other people, or patterns in our thoughts, right? Our beliefs about God, or patterns in our emotional world, but they apply just the same as in our movement. And so I see that quote as having a beautiful application for what therapy is about.
I hadn't heard that quote before, but I also didn't know that it originated from a more somatic, uh,
Yeah.
and it's very cool to see that you can apply it to both really and take from it and apply it to standard talk therapy. That's really very interesting. You mentioned that 90% of therapy is just having self-awareness. Would you say that 10% is then practically applying whatever is being discussed in therapy and whatever you're becoming aware of? Like, what would you say that last 10% of the therapeutic experience is?
Yeah, I think you nailed it, right? It really is taking uh like one of the other pieces. So I think that 10% piece is taking, and now we have just like a massive plethora of tools out there, right? So practices basically, right? Mindfulness, self-compassion, meditation. I teach a whole host of awareness practices. That can kind of encompass a lot of different things. Even basic, I call them resources more than just tools, of like a comforting cup of tea, right? Or even I normalize a comforting, positive TV show or a trusted friend, right? Can we find one trusted friend for you? And even more sophisticated ones like the self hug. And then even simpler ones like the five senses. So these are all tools and practices that I like to teach my clients, and some of them come knowing, but we talk about them and talk about how to integrate them because you do have to create an intentional moment or time in your day of practicing the muscle of awareness and focus. And this helps with that 90% of what we do. So there's learning about it in the therapy room, and then there's creating, maybe I start really small so that it's a measurable goal that I can meet, but it's 1 minute a day. I pause and I just follow my breath, or I become really aware of holding my cup of tea and the sensory input that it's giving me. And that begins to train my body how to be in the present moment, just with a little titrated micro moment that will build on itself in a lasting way, because you aren't diving into a 20-minute meditation that you've never done before, that your body's going to be overwhelmed and you're going to feel like you failed. And so I really like to help people like learn how to incorporate these and do those practices so that they build that muscle of awareness and noticing. And
I really liked what you said about taking even just a minute, because sometimes, I mean, I know for myself, I'll even look up meditations on YouTube, and some of them I've seen like 50-minute meditations.
Right,
I'm thinking to myself, who has time for that? And
right.
even if you have the time, like if you're in out in the real world and you're not in the comfort of your own home and you're on the go and you're feeling overwhelmed or triggered or whatever it might be, and you don't have 50 minutes, 20 minutes, half an hour to
Yeah.
do a full meditation, you're not in the space, you don't have the actual logistical time, it's nice to know that you can take no YouTube required, no Calm app required. You can just take your cup of tea. You can just follow your breath, like you said. There are
Yeah.
practical things that you can do just with yourself, just noticing even five senses around you, doing a
Yeah.
quick scan of your environment. And that's to me really valuable to have these little like tidbits of
Yeah.
uh, just working that muscle, but in practical ways that I can
Yeah.
just do whenever, wherever.
Yep. And I'll add, Devorah, one of the things that I like to add for clients with these practices is to bring them back to session and tell me, what did you experience when you did it? Like what did you notice and what happened? And the reason I do that is because everybody's body and nervous system and mind is going to actually respond very differently. And so with that, we can tweak and come up with what actually shifts your state, what is actually helpful, or what's hard about the practice, or what are you actually learning about yourself when you do the practice. And I can kind of deepen them into the nervous system understanding of what's happening when they do the five senses in their unique system, because some people do it and it actually increases anxiety. And some people do some of these things and it truly does calm their anxiety. And so we can work with that about what's going on and why does that happen and what do you need in a moment like that, right? So if it is increasing your anxiety, what does that mean and what can you do with it on a physiological level, right? If your goal is I need to go into something, I need to actually be calm, or was your goal something else and we can actually work on you building tolerance for feeling anxiety, because anxiety isn't all negative. So, and that's kind of more psychoed around what anxiety really is, but this is kind of more nuance of what I'll do in session with people.
A great reminder that not everybody responds the same way to certain, I guess, practices of
Yes.
self-care. Everybody has different mechanisms that work better for them or worse for them. So it's really great that you take that into account and you really go deep with your clients each session and make sure that they're getting almost like a tailor-made therapy like handbook for themselves that they can just carry around in the world. Going back to something that you spoke about earlier about self-trust, it sounds like therapy isn't just about symptom relief for you. It's more about creating a self that you can trust and really instilling that self-trust in your clients. What does that transformation look like for someone who's coming into your office?
It's unique to each client, but I think there's that combo. I think it is that combo of somebody becoming more aware, along with getting an experience in the therapy room of being attuned to and met, and then learning these practices that really help to build sustainable change. So, sort of that combo of awareness, sustainable change, an experience of being met. I think it all sort of collides in every person in a unique way where there just become these moments that they'll start to bring to session of like, ooh, this just happened and I know what to do, or this happened. And then I think that there is a natural, like, when anybody reaches out for therapy too, it just begins the ball rolling of like, we're doing this. Like, um, yeah, there's something about, I think, learning who we are that therapy really brings out, combined with the relational aspect that just helps. We learn who we are in relationship. And so if you haven't been attuned to throughout your life, you've been really misattuned to, chronically misattuned to, we'll often get a lot of self-doubt, a lot of misfirings in our nervous system, right? And so unwinding that and actually getting an experience of truly being attuned to and learning, what is fear that's sort of false and what's fear that I need to listen to, right? What's the like teasing out some of that stuff, I think really helps people delve into their gut, into trusting themselves. And I've always taken that stance as a therapist that they're the expert on their life. And I come alongside in collaboration because I know that that helps build self-trust, right? Nobody, I mean, especially as adults, right? We don't always learn by somebody saying, do this, do that. We sometimes want that. The kid in us wants that.
Right.
But having somebody to help you tease it out, right? And understand, okay, yeah, what is my gut really saying here and what do I need to do? I think it helps build trust.
To wrap up, for anyone who's listening, who's considering therapy, but is unsure if it's for them, what would you want them to know about the process and what's possible?
The biggest piece of therapy is it's a place to be met and attuned to first, right? If there is a challenging point, that comes second. A friend of mine says therapists are sort of like sin eaters. And I know that's sort of a Christian term, but I mean it in the most generous way of how we'll all often maybe have a feeling of not good enough or too much, right? That's sort of mean it like in that generous sense, right? We feel that we've maybe are not showing up our best, or our relationships are struggling, and what if it's my fault? Or we feel like even people have wronged us, right? There's pain, right? So it's kind of that generous sense, I mean it. And it's really true. Therapy is a place to sort of bring those burdens. And I do talk a lot about challenge and change and practices, but first we're going to meet you with your burdens and unload those and find some relief and some compassion and some feeling attuned to and met in those, because that's the first place of healing. And so the fears that it's going to be like church, or it's going to be like mom and dad disciplining me, or it's going to be, more things I have to do, that no, first it's let's meet you where you're at and let's just unload, right? That weight. That's the most important thing first. So I would say, know that that's going to be the starting point with any really good therapist. And so they will not challenge or push until you're ready, right? Until you want to take maybe another step or go further.
Well, I wanted to say thank you so much for this amazing conversation. I learned a lot, and I know everybody listening learned a lot.
Thanks for doing this. It's enjoyable just to share more in depth about what I do in therapy, and hopefully whoever watches this can understand a little bit more about what it would be like to work with me and feels open to the therapeutic process and the changes it could make for them if they really want to find some relief and change in their life.